Hi folks, this is your MWIS Winter Planner updated on Friday the 26th of January. The general pattern for the week ahead sees slightly higher than average pressure encompassing most of the British Isles, indicated here by the oranger colours, but we do have a prevailing west to southwesterly at times airflow moving across us, so we will stay rather changeable, especially further toward the north, but further south seeing more often dry conditions, some complications in the story, especially early in the new week. Temperatures are generally mild in relation to the seasonal averages through late January, and most of Europe is seeing those milder conditions at the moment, south to southwesterly winds prevailing across the continent as a whole. Even onwards into the start of February, and those mild and average conditions do prevail, with any chillier air just staying at the moment toward the north of Scotland. Rainfall amounts in 5-day steps are indicated as this, with Western Scotland seeing the greatest amounts, especially areas towards Skye and Torridon, west of Loch Linnhe, seeing the greatest falls over the 5-day period. Smaller amounts further north and east across the Highlands, and relatively smaller amounts too across much of England and Wales, but Western Hills will see some rain at times. Western Scotland looks as though it stays pretty wet through the following 5-day spell. That takes you through until the 5th of February. And again, Western Hills of England and Wales will see something coming through at times, but smaller amounts compared to Western Scotland. The trends further onwards, even through the 5 days to the 10th of February, indicate that it's Western Scotland that sees the greatest amounts of rain, all suggesting then that we're looking at Atlantic west or southwesterlies that prevail, with the Western Hills in general seeing those higher totals. Let's look at some more details in the shorter term. This is the freezing level starting off with this Saturday, and at that stage we're between around 1,000 and 1,200 metres through Saturday morning. That level just tending to lift a bit through the daytime, if anything drifting up just above freezing point, even towards the highest summits. And it's a mild air mass that will cover the country through the night and into Sunday daytime, with values above freezing point to the highest summits for much of the day. We do have a cold front coming in from the west though, and that will drop the freezing level quite sharply later through Sunday daytime in the western and northwestern parts of the Highlands, even lowering to 800 metres or so by the time we get to dusk and onwards into the evening. That lowering of freezing level extends further across Scotland, most likely overnight into Monday. Then it's quite complicated early in the new week, and a lot hinges on exactly where this freezing level does just move to, where the front moves to, for the boundary at least. On the northwestern side of a front, there'll be quite a low freezing level. Now, at this stage, it's suggested to be over southern Scotland and possibly as far as northern England. Other indications would have that a little bit further back into the Highlands, where we could see a freezing level down to 600 metres or lower, and the potential for some snowfalls. Further south and east of that, you're in milder air and generally well above freezing to the high top. So for much of Wales and probably much of North England, temperatures on the mountain tops are above freezing point. But scope across Scotland at least to see that lower freezing level through Monday. For the Highlands as a whole, I think you'd be looking between around 600 and 800 metres. That frontal zone moves its way back northwards into Tuesday, and again you've got that lower freezing level just in the north and northwest, pushing maybe further north with time. Temperatures above freezing point then to the mountain tops in England and Wales, most likely at that stage. By the time we get through to sort of middle part of the week, Wednesday or so, it becomes a rather messy situation. The general suggestion, though, is that it would be lifting near or above freezing point toward the high tops, and then milder air is broadly back in. So by later Wednesday and into Thursday, most areas are mild. Just toward the north of Scotland, you're close to a lower freezing level down to 1,000 metres or below. So on the whole, the later part of the week is looking to be on the milder side again for most. A quick look at those weekend weather maps, and it's a windy day across most hills and mountains through Saturday, up to gale force on most high tops, some quite gusty conditions in places around some of the higher passes and corries. West and northwest Scotland are seeing the greatest risk of some rain, especially near to those northwestern coasts. Spits and spots around western hills elsewhere, but a fair amount of dry weather and some broken cloud, the lowest of cloud typically near the west coast in Scotland. Those strong south to southwesterlies on Sunday will give gales or severe gales across most of the mountains. Again, some very turbulent conditions, powerful downslope gusts in places. The direction of the air coming up from the south to southwest will give some local very mild spots. Areas in the sheltered spots north of high ground, north of the mountains, could give some valley temperatures up to 13 to 16 degrees in places around the Moray Firth, North Wales, even north parts of the Lake District. North East England too could see some of those warm spots. Very high temperatures then for this stage in the season, but not unprecedented. These sorts of airflow patterns in midwinter can give those high values. Record temperatures of 17 or 18 degrees have been seen in similar sorts of regimes. The cold front coming in from the west then eventually will give some heavier rain, and that lowers the temperature as we saw on the freezing level chart. Monday then is a complicated one. We have that front having drifted southwards, and it comes back on itself as a warm front, so mild air stays over England and Wales, chillier air has moved into Scotland. That's the scope then for some snow over the hills. It may well come down to as low as 500 metres or so. I think any lower than that, more likely to be rain or at most sleet. For England and Wales, generally, it would be all of rain, but the potential into southern Scotland, maybe further north than this into the Highlands, for some snowfall during Monday. The southern Highlands seems to be the greatest risk of this as the front just pushes northwards. Further north and west over the Highlands, a greater chance of being drier. The wind, lighter by this stage, could be fairly light and variable for many, but just watch for forecast changes locally. It's quite a small and fairly weak zone of low pressure that's providing that rather complicated story into Monday and into Tuesday as well, as that's really sandwiched in between areas of high pressure. So what will happen eventually is that frontal zone will tend to weaken as time goes on through into Tuesday. Could leave some dregs of nuisance value rain and some snow flurries over the hills, but it is fading out, and a ridge of high pressure then tries to build in from the west, at least temporarily on Tuesday. I'll still be watching for the wind strengthening in west and northwest Scotland as southwesterlies once again come back in. Temperatures then around freezing point across the mountains, that freezing level still at least for a time hovering near to many tops. That gets milder though as we go through the week and southwesterlies come back in. Some further rain into west and northwest Scotland turns heavy. Could be some rain and drizzle for most places through the middle of the week. Western hills generally wettest. Rather windy conditions as well, at the risk of gales on the mountains. Typically not as stormy as we've seen recently, but still that potential for some sustained windy days and upland gales in the forecast through the second half of the week. And rain frequent in western Scotland. Really, I think any snow mostly just confined to the very high tops. The forecast model showing snow on the ground will really depend exactly where that little frontal system moves to during Monday, but here just to give an indication shows that scope for something over southern Scotland, maybe even northern England. I think that is a bit questionable at this stage whether that front is as far south as that, but the idea into the Highlands at least through late Monday into Tuesday gives a fresh covering over the hills and mountains at that stage, and that just then weakens away as things turn a bit milder through midweek to leave mostly just dregs of areas of snow and whatever is around from previous times where there's some compacted snow in and around the summits and corries from the colder spell earlier in January. Nothing really substantial, I'm afraid, there in the forecast for fresh snowfalls during the week ahead. The ongoing trend through into the middle of February sees high pressure out to the west and low pressure around Scandinavia, so maybe just the trend of something cooler trying to come around from the northwest. I think things are still quite close to average. Conditions still fairly dry toward the south, still maybe some showery conditions in north and western Scotland, just coming in off the Atlantic. With time, it seems as though high pressure wants to focus itself back towards the northwest, so that just blocking the progress of Atlantic weather systems, allowing some chillier air to get drawn in then from the north with time. Again, some drier conditions trying to arrive. It just depends how soon that high can block the Atlantic flow. And further toward the later part of February, again, the signal is for high pressure near and northwest of Britain, and that just allows that chance for the colder northerly pattern to come in. Wouldn't be surprising to see at least another go of wintry type patterns coming down from the north before the month of February is out. A bit challenging then to find good winter conditions in the week ahead. Keep an eye on all our forecasts, of course. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.